I don't know if it's true to all men, but I just noticed that my husband, and I also know the husbands of a couple of friends of mine, that whenever our husbands get sick, like yung common cold or simpleng lagnat lang, ang ate-ate nila, the feeling nila mamatay na sila. Na ultimo yung gamot nila, hindi pa nila kayang inumin na sila lang mag-isa. Kailangan talaga natin na tayo, mga misis, ang kumuha ng gamot, bigyan natin sa kanila just to make sure that they will take this medicine. With B, no, women, if we get sick, we're so independent. Kailangan talaga natin bumangon if kakayanin. Aside from being natural multitaskers, we also have the resiliency to rise above life's adversities. I don't know if you noticed this, but mas maraming baliw na lalaki na palaboy-laboy. Of course, I'm just joking, but I think there's also a certain truth to that. I hope I was able to inspire you with my story, my PhD journey. And I just would like to say that let us not forget to celebrate not just being a woman in competing, but mainly because being a woman is worth celebrating for. And thank you for allowing me to share my story. But I'm not done yet because I will still be presenting my main presentation. But I'm going to go over it very quickly. Okay, so now I'll be presenting my main presentation. I apologize na napahaba yung aking introduction. The title of my presentation is Predicting Peer Success in a Peer Programming Eye Tracking Experiment using Cross-Recurrence Quantification Analysis. This is still part of my dissertation, which I have not yet presented. And here are my talking points. I'm going to start with a brief introduction, then discuss what the GAZE cross-recurrence slot is and how it relates to collaborative eye tracking, then present to you briefly our methodology, then the results and discussion, then some conclusion and recommendations for future work. I assume that all of us are already familiar with peer programming, so I'm not going to discuss anymore what the setup looks like. But according to Preston, peer programming is a model of collaborative learning and it embodies all its aspects. And peer programming has become a well-known pedagogical practice for teaching introductory programming. Studies have shown that students who are involved in peer programming produce better quality of codes, they are more confident with their solutions, and they are more likely to succeed and persevere in their programming courses compared to solo programmers, and they also finish faster compared to solo programmers. However, prior studies on peer programming are centered on its effects on students' learning and self-esteem. That's why it's also suggested that studies should also focus on students' behavior and degree of collaboration during peer programming sessions. Dual eye tracking in peer programming has been explored to study joint attention in collaborative learning situations. For example, two eye trackers can be synchronized to study the gaze of individuals collaborating when they are solving a problem and to understand also how gaze and speech are coupled. Joint attention used to assess collaboration quality is often measured using the degree of gaze coupling. When we say joint attention, this refers to attending to something together with someone and being aware that both are attending. With the help of joint attention, we are being informed when do participants synchronize their gazes with their partner. And previous studies have explored the effect of joint attention on the quality of collaboration, and results suggest that productive collaboration is associated with more joint visual attention. When we say gaze coupling, this refers to moments when the partners are looking at the same target. This terminology was first coined by Richardson and Dale in their study about conversation and coordination. And according to more studies, gaze coupling could be an indicator of quality interaction and better comprehension, and could also reflect tightness of collaboration. The entirety of my dissertation is illustrated in this figure. Primarily, it is a pair programming, but I've also analyzed the individuals and the pairs. For the pair analysis, leader follower patterns, convergent and divergent episodes were analyzed by examining joint attention, which is measured using the degree of base coupling. And this was done using CRQA, or cross recurrence quantification analysis, and combined it with machine learning. For the individual analysis, the way individuals in the pairs read or parse codes as well as their manner of debugging were analyzed by estimating their focus of visual attention using the concept of I-mind hypothesis, which assumes that what a person is looking at indicates what they are currently thinking about or attending to. And basic eye tracking metrics were utilized in this part of the analysis. I don't have the entire day, not even half a day. I consumed already a big chunk of my allotted time, to discuss all of these things. So I will just be presenting the results of the pair analysis with emphasis on the creation of the model to predict pair success. When does a cross recurrence occur in a dual eye tracking setup? A cross recurrence occurs when two fixations from different sequences land within a given threshold of each other using some distance metric. When we say fixation in the context of eye tracking, this refers to the time when our eyes essentially stop scanning about the scene so that we can take in detailed information about what is being looked at. To explain further, let's take a look at this figure here. Let us assume that the red and green dots are from the fixation sequences of the two collaborators in a pair. Let's say collaborator A and collaborator B. And given a certain radius here, bounded by a black bordered circle, which is considered the threshold whether the two fixations are recurrent or not, we can say that fixation pairs 110 and fixation pairs 210 are judged as recurrent since their distances fall within the radius of the circle. Here's what the cross recurrence plot or a CRP looks like. Essentially, a CRP is just like an n by n matrix, which is a representation of a time coupling between two time series or trajectories. It's a form of visualization whose purpose is to compare the state of two time series if they visit the same region in the phase space, given the condition that the data should have the same phase space reconstruction. For example, in eye tracking, two fixations from different collaborators where each sequence contains the fixation X and Y coordinates and the fixation timestamps can be used as the two time series. Okay, so the labels along the X and Y axis are the timeline of the two collaborators. So X-axis collaborator A, the Y-axis for the collaborator B. If fixations I and J are recurrent, then they are represented as a black point or a pixel on this plot. Okay. Therefore, all the points in the plot here indicate that the fixations of the two collaborators are recurrent for their respective times. To understand better the relationship of a CRP and collaborative eye tracking, we have an example here, using one of the case scenarios in the study. This figure here shows snapshots of a program used as one of the stimuli in the experiment, overlaid with these colored circles. The colored circles are the fixation points of the two collaborators in this particular pair. Okay. The larger the circle, then the longer the duration of the fixation. Okay. The snapshot on the left with the aqua-colored circles is from collaborator A, and on the right with the purple-colored circles is from collaborator B. And then above these snapshots are the times in seconds past the starting time of the experiment when these fixations occurred. At these specific times, it can be seen how the fixation points are positioned at about the same location on the stimulus, which makes these fixations from collaborators A and B recurrent based on the definition of threshold. No? In this figure over here, we have the CRP. No? Part of the pixelated regions on the CRP enclosed in the red circle tells us that the fixation points of the two collaborators are recurrent. For example, for collaborator A, here on the x-axis, at about 2,467 seconds past the starting time, and for collaborator B, at about 2,440 seconds past the starting time, the two of them are looking at the same regions on their screens. Okay. And then this figure below is the corresponding scan pattern using a line graph of the CRP above. We have two subplots that illustrate the side-by-side comparison of the fixation x coordinates here in the top subplot and the fixation y coordinates in the bottom subplot of the two collaborators. The aqua and purple line graphs refer to the two collaborators also. No? The x-axis on the subplots represent the combined timeline of the two collaborators, and the y-axis represent the range of possible values of the fixation x and y coordinates, which is between 0 and 1 in reverse, because the origin in these point eye trackers that we use in this experiment is 1, not 0. And the sections of the scan patterns enclosed in circles in this figure show the positions in the timeline when these fixations occurred. It can be seen that the fixation x and y coordinates are positioned at about 0.5, okay, suggesting that these fixation points from the two collaborators are indeed recurrent. On the CRP, different types of small-scale structures called textures may be identified. When we see fading portions to the upper left and lower right corner, that means the data is non-stationary. If you have single and isolated recurrence points on your CRP, this would reflect random and strong fluctuations in the data. Horizontal, vertical lines, and rectangular clusters means that we have what we call laminar or trap states. And if we have bands of white spaces in the context of eye tracking, this would mean that two collaborators uninterruptedly look at two different spots on the screen. If you see empty regions, then the states within this period do not occur at any other times, and therefore the states are unique. And diagonal lines parallel to the main diagonal would mean that the collaborators look at the same spot on the screen continuously. An analysis using CRPs is called cross-recurrence quantification analysis. It determines how frequently two systems exhibit similar patterns of behavior over time. So basically, what CRQA does is it takes two different trajectories of the same information as input, and it tests between all points of the first trajectory against all points of the second trajectory. And we use CRQA to analyze the coordination of gaze patterns between individuals. Therefore, we can use it to measure how much and when two subjects look at the same spot. CRQA defines also several measures that can be assessed along the diagonal and vertical dimension of the CRP. For the diagonal dimension, we have recurrence rate, determinism, average diagonal length, the longest diagonal length, entropy, and diagonal recurrence profile. And for the vertical dimension, we have laminarity and trapping time. We would love to discuss these metrics into more technical details, but don't have the time. So I'll be just delving into their simple definitions in the context of eye tracking. Remember, I was telling you earlier about joint attention, which is measured using the degree of gaze coupling. This recurrent rate, or RR, in CRQA is what we use to represent the degree of gaze coupling. Hence, recurrence rate refers to the percentage of cross-recurrent fixations. And we have Determinism, which refers to the percentage of identical standpad segments of the two collaborators. Average diagonal length is the duration that both collaborators stay synchronized. The longest diagonal length is the longest uninterrupted period of time that both collaborators stay synchronized. Entropy has something to do with the complexity of the relation between standpads of the two eye tracking movements, two eye tracking data. Diagonal recurrence profile, we use this to observe the direction of the coordination. And then the last two, laminarity and trapping time in eye tracking, will represent the prolonged duration where the collaborators tend to focus on specific regions of the screen, either to denote increased concentration or problems in comprehension. So let's move on to the methodology. So the data set was gathered from 6 universities spread across the Philippines. We have 3 universities from Luzon, 1 university from Visayas, 2 universities from Mindanao, and we recruited students from second year to fourth year level in college who had already taken the college level fundamental programming courses. In total, we were able to recruit 42 pairs of participants, and that's 56 males and 28 females. And these are the data that we have collected: eye movement data, the discourse data, the videos containing recordings of fixation sequences, the program comprehension test results, self-efficacy survey ratings, degree of acquaintanceship survey results, and debugging scores. Okay. Then a slide sorter program with previews, preset, finish, and next buttons was created to display the 12 programs, which are the stimuli in the study, each preceded by a program specification to explain what the program is all about. Okay. When a bug is found, all the participant needs to do is click on the location of the bug using a mouse, and automatically the software will draw an oval to mark it, like the one you can see here in this figure. Okay. And the participants were also informed how many bugs were there in each program. So down below, we can see here, it's not clear now, and you're seeing 3 errors. So in this particular program, there are 3 errors that we can find. And the errors could be a syntax error, semantic, logic, or a combination of these types of errors. And the programs were categorized as easy, moderate, and hard. And then we performed data segmentation and cleaning. So the fixation files were cleaned by removing invalid base coordinates. And since the slide sorter program generated log files for every participant, we have to segregate it per slide. Okay. And the number of fixations per slide that contain the actual program were segmented with the help of these log files. Okay, so as you can see here, we have here the sample contents of the log file generated by the slide sorter program. It contains recordings of the buttons pressed, next, reviews, reset, and if the participant has already marked the location of the bug. And then we have the timestamps when these buttons were pressed, slide numbers. The slide 0 refers to the program specification of program 1. Slide 1 is referred to the program 1 itself, and so on and so forth. And we also have the X and Y screen coordinates of the ovals that appeared after the mouse click. Okay. To perform pair analysis, we categorize the pairs into either successful pairs or unsuccessful pairs based on the number of bugs found. Generated their cross-recurrence plots, derived the CRQA metrics, and categorize the results under these 2 categories. And we relate the CRPs and CRQA results to pair collaboration patterns. And to validate the results, we also examine chat logs and eye tracking recordings. We use 2 levels of granularity in the analysis. We have pair level, the aggregate of the 12 programs, and case level, program under each pair. Okay. Here is our definition of pair success. Success is measured in terms of debugging scores. So pair level, the pair is successful if the average debugging score of the 12 programs is greater than or equal to the mean score. Otherwise, the pair is unsuccessful. For the case level, case is successful when both participants in the pair marked correctly at least 50% of the bugs in each program. And a case is unsuccessful if both failed to mark all the bugs or if only one participant marked correctly at least 50% of the bugs. Okay? And then although we were able to recruit 42 pairs of participants, we had to discard one pair because of the huge fixation count discrepancies now between the participants, such that one had very high fixation counts and the other had very low fixation counts in all of the 12 programs. And we trimmed the cases to 376, no? Because cases with very low fixation counts are not good candidates for CRQA, and thus they were discarded. Okay. And then, so CRT was constructed for every program under each metric. And then CRQA was performed to get the CRQA metrics for each of the 12 programs under each pair. And we did this using the CRT toolbox for MATLAB, developed by Marwan et al. Okay. To illustrate an example of how a leader-follower scenario unfolds in a pair programming eye tracking study, we have here a snapshot of the program stimulus showing actual communication between partners and their fixation points. In this figure, participant A is considered the leader and participant B is the follower. Now, in the first scenario, participant A looked at a specific target on the program for about 3.4 seconds. After A had fixated long enough on the specific petition, A initiated a chat with B and told B to look at lines 9 and 10. B then responded to confirm if A was referring to the rock, scissor paper program. And also B looked at lines 9 and 10 and asked A what seemed to be the problem. What is the effect after both participants have looked at the same location in the program? Since the fixation points of A and B are positioned now at about the same location when they were looking at the program, regardless of the time they occurred, this made their fixations recurrent based on a set threshold. And hence, more occurrences of leader-follower dynamics could result to more cross-recurrence fixations and thus a higher recurrence rate. Okay. And then for the leader-follower patterns, this time we used the CRQA package developed by Coco and Dale because we could not find it from Marwan's toolbox. Okay. And we also included in this analysis only those cases where the pairs work together on the same program and communicated via chat. And then for the convergence patterns, we have defined 3 types of convergence. Type 1 is when the pairs are working on the same program together, either deliberately or not. Type 2, when they are communicating via chat to talk about the task, even if they were not looking at the same program. And type 3, when the pairs are working on the same program together and at the same time chatting, such that there is mutual awareness. Okay. And then the chat log of each pair was examined to confirm whether the pair chatted in every program. The number of times they converged via chat was recorded, and the average RRs and debugging scores under the 3 convergence types were also computed. And we have here an example of the actual transcript of one of the pairs in this study, as our basis when we record the number of convergence via chat. Okay. And then under 3 profile categories were considered, such as proficiency, gender, and acquaintanceship. Under proficiency, the pairs were categorized into both highly proficient pairs, both low proficiency pairs, and mixed proficiency pairs. Under gender, the pairs were categorized into both males, both females, and mixed gender pairs. And for the acquaintanceship category, the pairs were categorized into highly acquainted and poorly acquainted pairs. We did this to determine which pairs converged more through chat and who performed the best. And then we also performed correlation analysis to determine the impact of the pair features to success. Then two models were created, one for predicting individual success within pairs and the other for predicting pair success. But the coverage of my presentation is just on the pairs. All the significant features identified in the pair analysis were used as inputs to the models to set a benchmark by evaluating how well the models work on a complete data set. And then pre-processing operations were performed, such as removing dependent variables that significantly correlated with each other to address multicollinearity. Feature selection or variable elimination was performed to make sure that only the relevant features are fed into the models. For the filter methods, we used correlation attribute evaluation and gain ratio evaluation methods from WIC-PH. And for the wrapper methods, we used wrapper subset evaluation method using best first search also from WIC-PH. And then the optimized selection evolutionary operator from RapidMiner to generate these relevant features. Okay. And then since there is no perfect model for all data sets, a model should be chosen that would work best for this particular program. So three supervised classification algorithms were used. We have the logistic regression, which is the baseline algorithm based on a prior study conducted. And we have the support vector machines and gradient boosted keys. Okay. And 20-fold cross-validation was used since it has a smaller data set compared to the individual analysis. This was to ensure that each case was used for training and testing on equal number of times. And the performance measures used to compare and evaluate the three algorithms were the following. We have accuracy, area under curve, precision, recall, F-measure, and matrix correlation coefficient. Okay. Then moving on to results and discussion. For the pair level results, t-test showed no significant differences on the aggregate CRQA results between the pair categories. Okay. This confirms previous findings that cross-recurrence plots do not support aggregating data from numerous pairs over long time spans in order to abstract away individual differences and discover generalizable patterns of interaction. For the case level, successful cases have significantly lower CRQA results than unsuccessful cases. As you can see here in the table, all the p-values are significant across all the CRQA metrics. Okay. Then incidences of high and low instances of each CRQA metric in the successful and unsuccessful cases were examined if notable differences could be found. When you say high CRQA value, this is equal to or greater than the mean plus one standard deviation, and a low CRQA value is less than the mean minus one standard deviation. And we found that the successful cases had more incidences of more low CRQA values, and the unsuccessful cases have more incidences of high CRQA values. Then to further verify these generalizations and to guarantee that there were no crossovers, like there would be a successful case from the unsuccessful pair and vice versa, the analysis was narrowed down to 125 cases from the 19 successful pairs and 112 cases from the 22 unsuccessful pairs. And the findings were all the same, no? So from the reduced sample set, the SPs still have more incidences of low CRQA values, and the UPs also have more incidences of high CRQA values. No? The test was performed, and then significant differences was found, no? Except for Lmax, which is only approaching significance and could be due to the smaller sample size. Okay. And to determine what factors could have contributed to the CRQA differences, we extracted all successful cases representing successful pairs that have all low CRQA metric values, and all unsuccessful cases representing unsuccessful pairs with all high CRQA metric values from the new subset, and 15 successful cases and 11 unsuccessful cases with the CRQA criteria. Okay, and what we found was that the 15 successful cases have fixation count overall that are either low or below the fixation count median, and all except one. In the 11 unsuccessful cases have fixation count overall that are either high or above the fixation count median. Okay? The low fixation counts in SPs are depicted on the 15 CRPs as having mostly single isolated points, more bands of white spaces and empty regions, and fewer rectangular segments of recurrent points. And here are samples of the CRP of the successful pairs. No? And we also generated the corresponding fixation maps, to see the fixation distribution on the stimulus. And as you can see here, the fixation maps of the successful pairs show more dispersed fixation distribution, and the collaborators' fixations are mostly not clustered in similar areas. Then we also generated the corresponding scan patterns, just to see whether the scan paths are similar or they're dissimilar. And you can see here that the scan patterns of the CRPs of the successful pairs are more dissimilar compared to the unsuccessful pairs. Okay. And then as for the unsuccessful pairs, the high fixation counts are reflected on the 11 CRPs as having more rectangular or larger clusters of recurrence points, and they have more visual recurring patterns as shown in this sample CRP scheme. Okay. And then we will see that the fixation maps are heavily clustered on certain locations on the screen. And then the scan patterns are more, show more pronounced similar scan paths. Okay. In summary, for this particular analysis, the lower number of fixation count overall, more dispersed fixations, and less similar scan patterns resulted to low CRQA in SPs. And the higher number of fixation count overall, fixation cluster patterns, and more pronounced scan pattern similarities led to high CRQA in UPs. The larger horizontal or vertical segments and clusters of recurrence points in the CRPs called laminar states increase the values of LAM and PT. Then we also look at the possibility of confounding variables. So we analyzed this one, and for the results, we found that LMAX and TT were the only metrics that are not significant across categories based on program category and proficiency level of the pairs, and thus in the succeeding analysis, we already excluded them. Okay. And here are the characteristics of the pairs based on the CRQA metrics. RR, DET, and L are combined as these three metrics are more interconnected. So we found that successful pairs have more incidences of low CRQA values, and on the other hand, unsuccessful pairs have more incidences of high CRQA values. And we relate this with these interpretations. Of course, these interpretations are backed up with evidences. However, I will not be discussing anymore the evidences because we don't have time for that. But what we found, based on the experiment that was conducted, is that successful pairs having more low RR, DET, and L would mean that these pairs prefer more individual work, they chat more frequently, and they are more confident and they chat to confirm answers. Successful pairs having more low entropy means that they're more strategic and more precise when looking for errors. Having more low LAM means that they transition faster. That's why they finish sooner and find more errors, and they're more time conscious. Okay. On the other hand, for the unsuccessful pairs, having more high RR, DET, and L means that they have more incidences of staring but not really seeing. Yun ba, nakatitig ka na dun sa may error banda, but you don't even realize na yun na pala yung bug. Okay? That's why you would notice na may cluster of fixation sa isang particular area ng screen. Okay? Then having more high entropy means that they have varying levels of uncertainties when searching for errors. We have noticed more trial and error when searching for bugs. No? And then having more high LAM means that the unsuccessful pairs need more time, to look at to find the bugs. And they also have the habit of skipping problems, and going back to it at a certain time. That's why we can see visually recurring patterns. Okay. Then for the leader-follower patterns, no significant differences was found as to who is leading who. And no relationship is found between the leader-follower lag times and debugging scores, as well as the leader-follower lag times and recurrence rates. For the convergence patterns, we found that successful pairs significantly chatted more than the unsuccessful pairs. In the UPs, those who chatted had lower average debugging scores than those who did not chat. Those unsuccessful pairs who neither worked together nor chatted performed better than those who worked together and chatted. Okay? And the three profile categories were combined to determine which pair categories chatted the most and the least, and how their frequencies of chat convergence influence their debugging scores. These two figures here show the average frequency of convergence of each profile combination and also the average debugging score. Okay? And the results show that none of the HHFFPA, LLMMPA, LLFFPA, LLMFPA, HLMFPA chatted. And the one thing that these profile combinations have in common is that these are all poorly acquainted pairs. It suggests that pairs who are not friends are not really disposed to communicating with partners in a collaborative task. However, what's so interesting here is that the HHFFPA pairs, despite of not having communicated at all, still manage to perform the best. And this is consistent with previous findings that skilled strangers perform best because they already know from experience how to adapt well with groupmates or partners. On the other hand, the LLMMHA pairs, despite of having converged the most, turn out to have the worst performance. And this also affirms previous findings that friendship may diminish performance. Okay? And the summary for this analysis here, for the SPs had good collaboration, the kind of collaboration that led them to find more errors because they had more instances where they worked together on the same program and communicated. Their incidences of low RR was an indication that having communicated more did not guarantee that their cases would be synchronized. Some of their gaze patterns may have become aligned due to the joint activity during chatting and after a target was referenced by the partner. Highly proficient and highly acquainted pairs who communicated better were more successful in finding the errors. And then for the UPs, even though unsuccessful pairs turned out to have more high RR, their high degree of gaze coupling was generally a result of an unintentional gaze coordination as opposed to a gaze coordination that is caused by communication. It's also possible that there could be bad collaborating pairs who communicated with each other that resulted to a higher recurrence level. And this also aligns with current findings that highly coordinated pairs are not necessarily the best learning groups. Low proficient and poorly acquainted pairs who do not communicate are more likely to be unsuccessful in finding bugs. Okay. For the pair features versus success, the identified features which we consider as the pair features are the CR2A metrics except for LMAX and TP, the frequency of convergence via chat, prior knowledge and degree of acquaintanceship. And we found that although the CRQA metrics can be used to distinguish collaboration patterns, it has no bearing on the success of the pairs. And evidence suggests that not all highly gaze coordinated pairs were successful in finding bugs. Okay? Conversely, those with more low CRQA but had more incidences of convergence turned out to be successful. Okay? Convergence or chatting patterns may play a factor in the pair success, but chatting must be done in a productive manner. And the pair's proficiency level in programming may have a huge impact on the pair success. And now let's go to the last one, the results of the model construction. Okay, so this time we use the brute force for feature selection. Okay, and we compared the results of brute force with the results of the filter and wrapper evaluation methods. Okay. The table here, the first table here shows the performance of the three classification algorithms when all the features are fed into the model using 24 cross validation with successful as the positive class. And then the next three tables show the confusion matrices of each classification algorithm. The performance of LR and SVM classifiers are comparable, and GPT classifier performed way better. And then the first set of inputs here are the CRQA metrics, which were fed one by one to see the impact of each metric to the model. So we have RR first, then L, then LAM, then finally all the CRQA as input. Okay? And then the performance of the three classifiers when using only the individual CRQA metrics alone are incapable of predicting their success, which proves earlier that CRQA are not indicators of their success. And then, as we can see here, when we input all the CRQA values in the last table, the performance of the classifiers also was just a little bit better than chance. Okay. Then we also used the prior knowledge as input, and the three classifiers are almost the same, with only degree of acquaintanceship as input. The performance of LR and SVM classifiers is either more or less due to chance. The GPT classifier, however, performed satisfactorily. Okay, and using only the frequency of convergence as input resulted to the classifiers performing also only a little better than chance. Okay, then we input the non-CRQA metrics also by pair. And then the first table shows that the performance of the non-CRQA metrics, okay, and the best performance is achieved using the GBT classifier with prior knowledge and degree of acquaintanceship as input. This one over here, okay. However, the performance of the GBT classifier using all non-CRQA metrics as input is not far behind. We have 94.13 here. The performance of the classifiers using the other feature combinations can be found in the appendix of my manuscript. Lahat nandun na. For the LR classifier, it obtained its best performance with prior knowledge, degree of acquaintanceship, and LAM as input. For the SVM classifier, it also achieved its best performance using also this feature subset, but the same performance also obtained using only prior knowledge and LAM as input. Okay. And then the results of the filter and wrapper methods are shown here using the rank of each attribute. Using both correlation and gain ratio filter methods, prior knowledge ranked first. And the same result is achieved using the wrapper subset evaluation methods using best first search trained on decision tree and SVM classifiers. We also have prior knowledge. Okay. For the optimized selection evolutionary operator for feature selection, the aim actually is to find the minimum number of features that maximizes predictive accuracy. Okay. This figure here shows the deviation chart using the pair features. The chart shows the mean values for each feature of both classes. The transparent regions represent the standard deviations of the features for each class. There are three areas where the classes successful and unsuccessful widely differ, but the widest difference came from prior knowledge, followed by recurrence rate and degree of acquaintanceship. Okay. The result of the optimized selection evolutionary operator on decision tree and SVM burners are shown in these two figures. For the decision tree classifier, only two features are needed to obtain its maximum predictive accuracy of 88.1%. And these features are prior knowledge and degree of acquaintanceship. For the SVM classifier, two features are also needed for the highest accuracy rating of 81.4%. And these features are LAM and prior knowledge. And comparing these results now of the brute force method and the filter and wrapper approaches, the gain filter evaluation method, the wrapper subset evaluation method, and the optimized selection evolutionary operator trained on a decision tree classifier were able to capture the minimum number of predictors. And these are the prior knowledge and acquaintanceship as produced by the brute force approach. These two predictors gave the best performance using a GBT classifier for predicting success. Now, so in summary, an ensemble method such as GPT can create a model with an outstanding performance that is capable of predicting their success. And overall, the best performance of GPT is this one. Okay. The relevant predictors are the pair's proficiency level and degree of acquaintanceship. And this confirms the findings earlier stating that the performance of the pairs is highly dependent on the proficiency level of the individuals within pairs. The degree of acquaintanceship could also be a factor in the pair success, since how often pairs communicate depends on whether the individuals within pairs are highly or poorly acquainted. Okay, so we're now to the conclusion part. A pair is more likely to be successful given the following. First, when the individuals being paired together are both highly proficient in programming and are highly acquainted with each other. And pairs work together and chat more frequently with their partners. And CRQA metrics have no influence on the success of the pairs. Communication with partners play a factor in the success of the pairs. Okay? It is the pair's proficiency level in programming that makes a huge impact on the success of the pairs. The predictors for the pair success model that can obtain the best performance are the pair's proficiency level and degree of acquaintanceship. And this can be achieved using an ensemble algorithm such as gradient boosted-ease. And here are some recommendations for future work. The results of this study should be validated on students to substantiate the findings. You can also use image processing on the CRPs to capture meaningful information that relate to specific collaboration patterns. When using CRPs for clustering, the experimental design must be taken into careful consideration. In the experimental design, there should be a control and experiment group where joint attention can be manipulated. The artificial time limit should be removed, and instead of using a chat program, the use of voice chat is a better option so that the pairs can communicate more naturally. And that ends my presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Shane, for listening to my presentation. Have a nice day and stay safe, everyone.
Okay, good morning. So I'm Charilyn Santa Romana, and I will be the co-host for today. Unfortunately, I just got an email from Dr. Maureen that she cannot join us today. She has a family emergency. But I'm sure that you all agree with me, that she's such an amazing and very strong woman, and we are all inspired by her story. We have a lot of students here right now who are taking their master's and their doctoral degree. You see from her story, there are no excuses. We just have to do it, right? So I will send to her all of your thanks. I told her through the email that, that she serves as an inspiration to all of you. Let's push it. Let's take inspiration from her, and let's try to work also, no, to all of you who are doing your whatever challenges that you are facing right now. On the other hand, her research is also very exciting, right? And I'm sure you all agree with me about that. I think it's a very good thing to maybe try during this online mode of delivery, right? When we do pair programming, I think it's a very exciting thing that was done prior to the pandemic, I'm sure, and it's a nice thing, I think, to try. Maybe if you want, you can send an email to her, and maybe you can collaborate and do this thing, So just to reiterate, Dr. Maureen was actually awarded, I think last April, by the Association in Computing Machinery Women in Computing Group as Asia Pacific Rising Star Awardee. Truly, she's very deserving of that particular award. So even though she's not here, and I think you do not have questions, you're just saying thank you, because she's not here anyway. Maybe we can present, just to show it to you all, our certificate of appreciation to her for being very, very vulnerable and sharing her stories with us. So a certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Maureen Villamor for serving as speaker and basically inspiring all of us to move forward and push on despite all our difficulties. During the ACM WIC-PH Celebration held virtually today, October 9, signed by yours truly, Charlene Santaromena, Conference Chair, and Dr. Rachel Edita Rojas, President of the Computing Society of the Philippines. I hope that we can all give, again, Dr. Maureen Villamor a virtual round of applause. So I now turn you over to Dr. Lea Barbasa for the next speaker.
After listening to Dr. Villamor's very inspiring talk, I suddenly remember the saying I came across in Google. A woman is like a tea bag. You never know her strength until she is in hot water. So anyway, at this point, let us proceed to our second keynote speaker for this morning. Our second keynote speaker is the head of analytics platforms and a senior data scientist in Cobena, a data science and consulting startup. She graduated computer science from the Ateneo de Manila University in 2016. Currently, she handles program management for the data, product, and tech group of their parent company, Demand Science, coordinating milestones across a globally distributed team and leading product engineering for the revenue intelligence solutions. Outside of her day job, she is passionate about creating opportunities for investing. Outside of her day job, she is passionate about creating opportunities for and investing into the lives of people, especially the kids. She leads the Barangay Coding Program of AHA Learning Center, where volunteers teach coding to public high school students who have the least in life. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give another virtual applause to Ms. Leona Lau.
One of the questions I used to hate hearing was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I had no idea. I could barely envision where I wanted to be in 2 years' time or decide where I wanted to eat for dinner. When I was younger, I used to think building a career meant you had to choose one among many possible paths. On my college applications, under my preferred courses, I wrote architecture because I love design. I ticked the checkbox to apply to the intermed program of the UP College of Medicine. I wrote biology in another application because it was my favorite science, and then computer science and computer engineering without knowing the difference. I had gone to a science high school that required me to take a STEM course. If I hadn't been required, I wonder if I'd have considered lit, philosophy, or design too. In the end, I chose computer science because it seemed like the decision that wasn't really a decision. I figured I could decide later to go into computational biology, computational linguistics, or maybe create medical or CAD software. It's no wonder then that when I graduated, I was still faced with the question of what kind of computer scientist I wanted to be. I joined a data science startup, but I love designing user experiences and building front-end web applications. I love languages, so I wondered if I should pursue that computational linguistics track after all, and maybe go into machine translation. The longer I stayed in tech, the more paths I seemed to discover of all the places I could go. Over the years, though, this is what I've learned. It isn't about choosing one among many disconnected paths. There's only one path, yours. Today, I'm here to talk about how I've built mine. First, I plan to talk about my career so far in the intersections of data science and product management or engineering, especially as someone who has a broad set of interests, or what others would call a generalist. I'll briefly touch on some of the projects I've enjoyed working on and how my various experiences helped me discover more of where I wanted to be. I'll also talk about how my exploration, discovery, and self-reinvention was enabled by being in a startup and contrast it against my experience post-acquisition working with a more global organization. Lastly, I'll talk about what it's been like as a woman in this space. Hi everyone, I am Leona Lau. The work I do is in 5 areas: data science and business intelligence, product management, software engineering, strategic consulting, and I also do a bit of teaching in my volunteer work. As you might have realized then, I'm a bit of a generalist. I admire polymaths, people who others would describe as a jack of all trades. I sometimes feel guilty to admit this to people, like I'm wearing a cone of shame. In tech, people tend to honor specialists and geniuses. We like the experts, the data engineer who can explain to us how to set up sharding and indexing, the data scientist who can code a neural network from scratch. They're brilliant, amazing, and they're torchbearers for the rest of us to walk behind as they make advancement after advancement in their field of study after decades of hard work. So it's no wonder we pressure ourselves into deciding. In a field that's moving at such a rapid pace, it feels like every moment you delay choosing, you're already being left behind. I remember people telling me I'd find my passion eventually, but I don't think I ever discovered, or maybe I'm still yet to discover, that one thing I want to do with my life. Instead, I've meandered and wandered through different experiences until I discovered things I found I loved doing and was proud of. Today, I summarize the work I do into those 5 things. It's probably still too many things and way too broad, but it's progress to someone like me who started from architecture and biology. I started my career in software engineering. I took up an internship and built collaboration software during that time, and I was the first developer for the geospatial analytics system we were building at our startup. We aim to bring together data from various Philippine agencies and publicly available sources and make self-service location analytics easy for Philippine businesses so that they could prioritize areas to invest in, select locations for facilities or branches, or understand their existing sites or location. Because of the software development work I was doing on that product, I naturally progressed into doing a lot of ad hoc data science projects in the area of geospatial analytics as well. In one project, for example, we had a leading restaurant chain come to us with aggressive expansion targets. They were asking us what makes for a successful branch? How do store locations affect cannibalization of our branches? And where should we be setting up new store locations? To approach this, we first analyzed the geospatial characteristics around their site locations against internal attributes like store format, local store marketing initiatives, and availability of services in their different stores so that we could classify high-performing versus low-performing stores and provide dashboards for them to visualize those. We also studied clusters of key locations where a lot of economic activity was happening and looked into the store cannibalization between nearby branches. In doing so, we took into consideration not only the distance between branch A and branch B, but also the walking and drive time distance. Another layer of the analysis that we did was estimating the out-of-home food expenditure across the 1,600 or so cities and municipalities in the Philippines. We matched that against the economic attractiveness of these areas as shown by their development indicators. And we looked for specific sites and specific locations that were surrounding the same types of points of interest that were common among their high-performing branches and came to them with that recommendation. The more we worked on these projects and spoke to our customers, the more we saw common business needs across them, and we worked to iterate our geospatial analytics product. My role naturally evolved into product management. I started handling a cross-functional team of developers, analysts, and data engineers, and led them in the product development of our solution, even while I continued to interface with customers and do those ad hoc analytics projects whenever there were things our platform could not support. Because I worked so closely with our customers all the way to their executive teams, even as I continued to be in the weeds with our engineering and analytics teams, I eventually started working on more strategic consulting projects for these organizations to help them bridge that gap between business and tech. I helped enterprises craft their multi-year digital transformation strategies. We worked, for example, with a healthcare and consumer goods company to uncover some of their cross-functional pain points across sales, marketing, finance, and other areas of the business, and we mapped out what's their current state versus the future state that they want to get to, and recommend a roadmap for digitally transforming their business. The low-hanging fruit we tapped first was to align on their key KPIs and metrics and map their interrelationships so that they could have a more holistic picture of how the business was running, and we designed those dashboards to track and monitor those metrics for them. All in all, these experiences seemed messy, formless, and disconnected while I was going through them. But today, it's in retrospect that I know what it is I'm uniquely great at, and I can see it coming out of all the different things I was doing then. It's bridging design, business, and tech to build products and solutions. And my superpower is that I've been in engineering and analytics myself, so I'm not afraid to dive deep. Having focus is important, and I don't encourage everyone to take the same meandering paths I took. Some people need to take time in the hallway to try opening doors, and others know immediately which door they need to knock at. What I want to share, though, is that being a generalist isn't necessarily a disadvantage, especially in early career stages. David Epstein has a great book called Range, where he cites research on how early specialization and deliberate practice is key to success in what are called kind learning environments, like golf, chess, or playing classical music, whereas generalists thrive in more wicked learning environments. The most kind environment is one where all the information is completely available, patterns repeat, possible situations are constrained, feedback on everything you do is both immediate and 100% accurate, and there's no human behavior involved other than your own. In wicked domains, the rules of the game are often unclear or incomplete. They may or may not be repetitive patterns, and they may not be obvious, and feedback is often delayed, inaccurate, or both. He starts with exploring this trend in athletes. Elite athletes typically spend less time in early childhood on deliberate practice while they're still exploring various sports. He extends this to other examples, such as Nobel laureates who typically have other hobbies outside their field of study. He shared, for example, how in England, students by age 15 or 16 have to pick what they're going to study because they have to test into specific programs in college, versus Scotland, where they don't. They have instead what's called a sampling period, where they can experiment the first 2 years and can even continue taking some other courses beyond that. Epstein asks, who wins this trade-off? What he finds is that the early specializers jump out to an income lead, but they pick worse fits for themselves. The later specializers catch up and surpass them by about 6 years out. Then the early specializers start quitting their careers in higher numbers because they failed to optimize their match quality. Match quality is the term economists use for the degree of fit between an individual's ability and the interest in the work that they do. So what's the point of this research? Your insight into yourself is constrained by your roster of previous experiences. I like this progression shared by John Cutler, the head of product at Amplitude. You won't know what you want to do until you discover what you want to do. And then that's when deliberate practice and building of your expertise can come in, and that's where it really matters. Maximize your match quality and then go deep. You see in this chart, starting out is a broad generalist who then defines a specific area of competence and becomes what's called a T-shaped person. Cutler's progression takes things further though by suggesting a way of deepening with adjacencies and related domains. In the beginning of your career, it's good to learn from different areas of computer science. As the years pass and skills compound, that's when it's great to look for areas to innovate in and specialize in. In innovation, by very definition, patterns don't repeat, and as such, it's a wicked domain. Epstein talks in his book about how breadth of training predicts breadth of transfer. The more varied your training is, the better you'll be able to apply your skills flexibly to situations you haven't encountered before. You might ask, if it's not choosing a specific thing to do, then how do I choose where to go? I propose looking at two things. The first is purpose or mission, and the second is environment. I'll start with purpose or mission. I'm reminded of the Pixar movie Soul. In the film, Joe Gardner and 22 are in the Great Before, where the unborn souls are, desperately looking to find 22's spark so she can complete her badge and start living. They think it needs to be a passion, her life's purpose. Spoiler alert, it's not. A spark can be much simpler. Let's revisit that word, passion. Passion comes from the late Latin passionem, meaning suffering or enduring, from the past participle stem of the Latin pati, which means to endure, undergo, or experience. So when I say purpose or passion, I mean simply an answer to for whom, for what. It doesn't need to be your life's purpose. What problems do you feel compelled to solve? Just keep solving the ones that are big enough to be worthy of your best energies and time. Ask yourself, how, with my existing abilities and opportunities, can I be of greatest service to human need? How can I create things of enduring value? And how can I extend love and care to those who experience my work? At the end of the day, competent work is a form of love. Just because your spark isn't grand doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. The second thing I propose to consider is the environment. In my particular case, I'll talk about startups versus larger orgs. When I joined Covina in 2016, we were hot desking in an accounting office in Makati. I joined as employee number 6, and every day was completely unexpected. 5 years later, in 2021, Covina is now under Demand Science Group, which is globally distributed across the Philippines, US, Canada, France, India, New Zealand, and probably a couple others I might have missed. In this new role, I do program management across different data, product, and tech. A bit of data engineering, some data quality work, platform engineering, AI engineering, and bits and pieces of other initiatives. I do well in this role because I'm great at bridging all of those. While I do that though, I also lead AI and ML for one of those streams, and I manage a product focused on revenue intelligence. The current work I do is an example of how teams can be both wide and deep. I have very minimal knowledge about data engineering, but we have specialists who own that, people who are great at what they do, and so all I need to know is enough to connect it to the other pieces of work that's going on. I've spent a long time in data science though, so I can sit down together with our analysts and do code reviews, discuss detailed model performance metrics, and brainstorm different modeling approaches based on the latest academic papers we've read. What I've found is that larger orgs tend to need more specialized people, while startups need people who can multi-hat. Startups generally can't afford too many people, so it's great to have people who are versatile on the team. Startups need people who can dig into the many problems that a startup faces and wrestle with all of the uncertainties, and approach problems with creativity and flexibility. Of course, those skills are also valuable in large orgs. People who want to be technical leads in large organizations need to be able to understand how different pieces outside their own work fit together into a larger whole. But in larger organizations, there's more time and resources to focus on a few things, and in larger organizations, there's a lot of opportunity to learn from engineers who have built more expertise. So I think it's important to ask ourselves what environment will allow us to grow in the ways we want at this particular juncture. For me though, what's more important than deciding where to go is bringing your whole self and stepping wholeheartedly forward through the open doors before me. Part of who I am, for example, is that I'm a woman. Some of the challenges I've experienced as a woman in this space are as follows. The first is imposter syndrome and lack of confidence. There's a 2016 Harvard study where they find that women with 8 years of programming experience are as confident as men with 1 year of programming experience. This is a sad statistic, so I looked for a newer study, hoping that things are better. I found a newer 2020 study by Liberatore and Wagner, although I'm not sure if it's any less encouraging. They found that women are equal to men in computing skill, but are less confident. They administered competency tests to both women and men in various scenarios, and they found that women were less confident of their answers in all scenarios, rating themselves at 3.5 versus 3.88 for men on a scale of 1 to 5, despite them performing at the same level as men on all circumstances but one. There's also the societal biases. Men are seen as more authoritative or the experts. I've personally found this to be difficult as someone who's leaning to more of a generalist tendency. Because I'm never known for one thing. I'm never the go-to expert. Even when I'm the most knowledgeable on a particular subject, it sometimes happens that someone responds to my input by saying, "Let's ask for male colleague A's suggestion." To be honest, maybe I reinforce this too, and this is related to the earlier challenge. Whenever I soften my own opinions, I start my sentences with, "I think we should try. Perhaps it would be better. It may be good if." Because even though I know my recommendation is pretty solid with the information I have, part of me wonders whether I know enough and whether I'm competent enough to really say so. The third challenge is being talked over. Being talked over in meetings or being outright ignored is unfortunately a common experience for women. And it's something I've experienced myself in many instances. People don't mean to, but it happens. It's especially difficult now in the online setting because there aren't facial cues to indicate when someone's about to interrupt you or when someone's about to talk. And you can't just shoot them a look to say, "Please let me finish." There are also different standards between men and women. McKinsey reported in one of its studies that women are often held to higher performance standards than men. While men are often harder promoted based on their potential, women are assessed usually based on their experience and their track record. Men, for example, apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the qualifications, but women apply only if they meet 100% of them. This was a very popular statistic that came from a Hewlett-Packard internal report and was cited across various books and dozens of articles. I'm sharing these challenges because the more I was aware of them, the more I realized all the subtle ways I and others around me were conditioning me to feel like I wasn't made for this. Which I know is untrue because despite these challenges, I've also discovered because I'd been talked over before, I became a better listener and had deeper empathy for those who might feel out of place or lack confidence in their own abilities. B, I could pave the way for other women to be more confident and clear-eyed about who they can be in a room full of men and with so few role models with similar interests and challenges. I've hired and mentored women who were just like me when they started their careers, anxious to speak up, constantly undermining their own competence, further compounded by the fact they were still unsure of where they wanted to be and where their broad-reaching skills could take them. They look at me like I'm amazing and have it all figured out, but in reality, I know I was just like them 5 years ago, and the best part is that I can help them walk through the challenges I myself encountered. And this is important, that we as women realize we can take up space in this field because women are necessary in data, product, and tech beyond just the fact that it looks nice on HR gender diversity KPIs. We're important because women are needed to catch biases in data science models, build more inclusive products and interfaces, and to make sure there's a woman in a seat at the table for decisions that impact us. For example, hiring models, credit scoring models, considering female anatomies and crash test dummies, making sure that the language we use in our products don't make women feel unsafe, that we consider mothers in our target audience, and so on. Today, I've told the story of how I've built my path. As a generalist with no singular passion in a startup turned global organization as a woman in tech. Because this path is mine, I know not everything will resonate or be relevant to you. But here's what I tell myself from 5 years ago. To the girl who couldn't have guessed or answered, I'd be here now. And if you're anything like me, I hope there are pieces you can take with you on your own path. If you struggle with choosing which path to pursue, know that the fields are not disconnected, that if you learn well, your skills can still be valuable and transfer to other disciplines, and that you don't need to have all the words for who you are or who you want to be, to move bravely forward and to be excellent where you are. Data, product, and tech are all so quickly evolving and growing in unprecedented ways. There's lots of room to create a path you can call yours. There's a lot of talk about finding your passion or following it. That's cool, but know that it doesn't need to be one thing to do for the rest of your life. It's enough to ask ourselves, for whom, for what? Find something worth devoting your best to at this point in your life, something bigger than. Find people you're excited about solving problems for. Find work you enjoy doing, something enduring, and bring your whole self into solving those problems. And find environments that empower you to do that. Startups and big corporations are both great, so just find one that suits your season. And remember that you don't need to find everything in your day job. Find a nonprofit, start a side project, join an interest group or a community. The world is wide. And as you do that, remember that your whole self includes all your skills and all your interests. But for the women out there, it also includes the fact that you're a woman. Own your story and don't be afraid to take up space. Finally, Remember that you don't owe it to anybody to stay the same. You can reinvent yourself and you can build and rebuild your path as many times as it takes. Thank you for listening and for the opportunity to share my journey with you. May we all continue building a life we're proud of and find our space here in the computing. The world needs you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Let's give her a virtual round of applause, please. She's here with us today. Thank you very much, Miss Leona. May I request her to join us in this Q&A? She's here. Can we enable her camera sharing, please? Can you spotlight Miss Leona? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Miss Leona. First of all, I would like to thank Ma'am Didit for suggesting that we invite these two powerful women. You're a breath of fresh air, very young, and I'm sure you have inspired a lot of our students. I think we have a lot of students listening to us right now, and I'm sure that you have served as an inspiration to them. But anyway, so this is the Q&A portion. Let's start with there's a question here in the Q&A chat box. So from Mr. I think Saportesa, as to the data analytics, would you like to stay being a generalist, or would you agree to adapt to the maturity level of the data science roles?
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to everyone. For this question, I guess I'll answer it two ways. So in general, what I think for the data analytics and data science field, and personally, what my preference is. So in terms of taking on data analytics or data science roles in general, for the skills, I think there's a certain breadth that's always good to have. Generally, when I hire or when we train our data scientists, aside from the usual data science competencies we associate, like strong math and statistics and being able to work with different data science models, I also look across adjacent competencies, like their data engineering ability and how comfortable they are working with the data prior to making sure it's sufficient for their data science models, and thinking through how they'll deploy those models so that they can be of use to the end users. So I think that end-to-end perspective is always good to have. Having said that, I do think that once you have that general breadth, it's good to identify specific areas you can mature more as a data scientist and grow your technical skills there. So there. Personally, I love taking on more leadership roles in teams and coordination work. So I typically work with more specialized data scientists that focus on certain components of the work. So I generally do a lot of the foundational work. And then once we've set up that baseline, that's when I work with more of our yung people sa team namin na talagang data science talaga ang passion ko, ganyan sila. And they're a lot better than me at doing that job. So that's when I work with them, and they usually have some great perspective to share on other things we could try and improve to. So parang ako yung nandun sa 0 to 1, pero sila yung nagtitake from 1 to exponential levels ng work that we do.
Okay, so in relation to that, yesterday we had a back-to-back conference, and in that conference, the BS Data Science and Analytics program was actually presented. So because you're from a computer science background, right? Your degree was in computer science, not necessarily data science. And I actually said that a BS computer science graduate, maybe if we give them enough courses, they can go into data science, right? So I would like to ask, because you mentioned about math statistics, how did the BS computer science program prepare you basically for this particular path, which is data science? Would you recommend any particular courses that we can embed in a computer science program, for example, that will make them better prepared for this one?
I think when I came into data science, one area that I felt I hadn't covered as extensively in my computer science program was statistics. So that we studied statistics, but the depth of understanding was not at the same level as some of my other data science counterparts who had a stronger grasp. So I think for those coming from computer science degrees, that's definitely one area to look at. Um, the other I'd suggest would be more of the business mindset, I guess, business thinking, particularly if you're going into industry, because since data science requires, I think a common mistake young data scientists make is jumping into modeling and testing out logistic regression, SVM, etc., neural networks on a data set without understanding the business problem. So being able to work with the business stakeholders to uncover what you're supposed to be modeling in the first place is a valuable skill.
Yeah, okay. So we have one of the participants is asking for your email address. Ano? Maybe we can chat it later on. Ano? I'll just chat it later on. Do we have other questions from the... Here, let's look at the chat. Okay. Okay, so here's a question from Ferdy Bellarmino. What are your thoughts or views regarding women in tech, women becoming tech leaders in Google, Microsoft, for example? Women can become great CTOs, CIOs. What are the women that can be, can women become great CTOs or CIOs? Okay, what are the women that can be incorporated in running the IT industries? Are we ready, for example, for the likes of Lady Ada Curie, Grace Hopper, etc.? Miss Universe question, I think, right?
Yes.
Anyway.
Well, the answer is definitely yes. I definitely think we are ready for and need women tech leaders in these large tech corporations and even outside large tech corporations. What I've noticed in like my interactions with the global counterparts is that often not often actually. I think I'm the only engineering leader usually in the virtual room. I work with maybe 6 or 9 other engineering leads in our organization, and I don't know if there are other female data scientists and engineers, but they usually don't take on leadership roles. That which is unfortunate because I think that women bring a lot of things to the table that usually get kind of overlooked by the stereotypical tech bro culture. And when I've worked with other women in our organization, it's usually there's I can't put words to it, pero parang there's a manner of thinking na very organized, empathetic, and they are usually also the ones who actually notice na kasi I feel most organizations don't set out naman na we don't put female leaders in our top seats. Nobody starts out that way. It just sort of happens. But when you start having just that one person and yung one woman na yon usually yung makaka-notice na parang kulang tayo ng females on our team, and they're the ones who advocate na I think we should hire or give a chance to others. Kasi even in interviews, what you'll notice is that the male programmers usually are more confident. Parang they speak about their achievements with greater confidence versus the females na medyo hesitant. Parang, trinay ko po pero hindi pa ako masyado magaling versus parang, yes, I tried that. So they kind of self-reject or yon. Kaya rin feeling ko hindi sila umaangat usually to leadership positions. But yes, definitely we need those people, and women are very competent naman for it.
Okay, so how do you overcome fear? There's another question here. How do you overcome your fear, when you are afraid to fail in pursuing your passion? Miss Universe then, right? So I think you're in the Miss Universe competition.
How
Here,
to overcome fear? I think for me, what what I usually tell myself to encourage myself to try things is that um, even if parang hindi nagwo-work sa akin yung mga mantra na oh it's not you're not really failing, you're learning from the experience. That doesn't work for me, and maybe it works for some people, but for me what's more encouraging is even if I fail, it doesn't really matter. Most people won't remember my failure. It's just me. It's just me. It's just me remembering. And there's time to try new things and explore new things.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think I like that. No, I like that. That sometimes we focus so much on our failure, no? And then sometimes I think, why are you so vain? People are not thinking about you. Sometimes I tell myself that why would people think about you? You're just thinking about you. The other people are not thinking about you. They have so many other problems on their own. So I guess that's a good advice. Why would you actually even think about it, right? So you just have to try. Thank you for that answer. Would you recommend certifications for data science? Would you recommend that? There's a question. Are there available data science certifications?
I don't know about vendor specific certification exams. I know there are a few. We have people on the team who've studied, for example, the data engineering specialization offered by Google Cloud, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to start out in the data science field. I know a lot of people who've benefited from taking boot camps and fellowships more than um, online certification exams. I think the peer learning environment really helps, and they get exposed usually to other mentors in the industry. So I think it's beneficial. I know we have a lot of team members now who completed data science fellowship from SQL Labs. There's a for the women's scholarship, they're a foundation and they do data science training as well. So we also have team members who graduated from that program. Yeah, and a couple of others.
Yeah, okay, but then maybe, before you go into, I think we have to remember what you said earlier, that maybe we have to go back to our statistics background and try to strengthen that before we jump into, data science. But anyway, I think I don't know if there are other questions, but yesterday, I want to go back to what happened yesterday when the data science program was presented, basically. So one of the panelists actually said asked this question: how come that project management is not a required in the curriculum? It's an elective. And I know that you do. Basically, what you do is project management, the way I see it, right? You're a product manager, and basically that's project management. So what do you think about that particular recommendation? Is a course on project management helpful, for example? Or do you learn that on the job, or do you have to need a foundation on that?
I vaguely recall taking up some project management back when we studied, although it wasn't covered as extensively. I'd say it's beneficial, but depending on the track you want to take, it's not always at the top of the priority list. It's beneficial because as a product manager, project program manager, all of those things, it's usually the ones who have also tried doing some project management are familiar with the challenges and the benefits of it that are the easiest to work with and collaborate with. But I also recognize that not everyone wants to take on more managerial or leadership roles in the team, and that's okay. Some people excel at being the rock stars, or really the solid foundation of a team, where they don't they don't like the people coordination as much. They prefer being coordinated and there's someone taking on that more manager role. So
Yeah, okay. So because and of course, the data science program that was presented actually has a lot of statistics and a lot of mathematics. And I know that the Ateneo Computer Science program, of course, already has a lot of mathematics. I'm not just so sure about the statistics requirement. Okay, I think we have another question here. Okay, are there still salary gaps received by women IT leaders and male IT leaders? What are your thoughts on this?
here in the Philippines, I don't know. I don't know. But globally, there still is that gap. Yes, there still
Yeah,
is that gap. I think
that's
a lot
sad.
of it is
That's
because
sad.
yeah, it's sad. But as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of it is also because males nga are typically compensated, promoted, hired based on potential versus women who usually want to demonstrate first a track record of experience. So they also negotiate less. Um, they also
Yeah.
negotiate less than their male counterparts.
Yeah, and it has something to do with the confidence, right, that you were talking about later on, ano? So because if you lack confidence, then you will not negotiate your salary, no? But anyway, so do we have other questions here? Maybe we have questions from the panel. Would they want to ask questions? No more? Okay, so thank you very, very much, Ms. Leona Lau, for being with us today. Thank you for inspiring a lot of our young women. It's a very, and to all of those participants out there, the Computing Society of the Philippines Women in Computing Group, we have started to, conduct webinars, mga 1-hour webinars regularly every month. So if you follow our FB page, you will know that we do this and we invite, women in tech like Ms. Lau to, share their experiences with us. And men are invited, definitely. Men are invited not to join these webinars. No problem about it. You can join, yes, no problem. We allow women, men and women to join. We just call this particular group the Women in Computing, group. Okay. So this is a very inspiring morning for all of us. But be okay. So it's now time to award our, unless no more questions, it's now time to award our certificate of to the team. Can we award can we say our official thank you by awarding this certificate of appreciation to Ms. Leona Lau for serving as speaker and inspiring our participants during this ACM Women in Computing PH Celebration held today virtually, signed by yours truly as the conference chair and by Dr. Rachel Edita Rojas, President of the Computing Society of the Philippines. So thank you very much. Any last words for our audience, Ms. Lau?
No, thank you so
It's
much.
okay.
I hope you guys have a great morning and keep on
Thank you
keeping
very
on.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Dr.
you.
Rachel?
Just want to thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, so we now go to that. So I think we will be able to finish early this morning. We now go to the we now go to the presentation of the nominees for the Women in Computing, and I would like to request Dr. Rachel Rojas to do the honors. Can we present the slides?
Thank you, Dr. Cherry Lynn Santa Romana. Thank you for the hard work. It has been a very fruitful morning. Thank you for all the participants. So we will be presenting the nominees for the board of the Computing Society of the Philippines Special Interest Group on Women in Computing. So as mentioned, we are opening the board for 9 members of the board. So here are the nominees that we received through the online nomination.
Next slide, please.
So an email was sent to the members because those who can nominate should be members of good standing. So of the Computing Society of the Philippines, and there were 12 official nominees, and I believe only nine accepted the nomination because they have to confirm if they are willing to serve in the board. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the nominees. Thank you for accepting the challenge and the willingness to work with us. So Abisado Midet, National University from Luzon. If you are here, please acknowledge. Adlaon Christine May, Immaculate Conception, Mindanao. Sanisa Angie, University of San Carlos, Visayas. Andrano Christine, De La Salle University, Luzon. Lacasandile Angelique, National University, Luzon. Next slide, please. Maceda Lani, Bicol University from Luzon. Salido Julian, Aklan State University, Visayas. Our very own Santa Romana Charlene, CIT University, Visayas, and Malabanan Seni, Mindanao State University, IIT, Mindanao. So that's, I think that's all. So thank you, Cherry.
Okay, maybe we can, okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Rachel Rojas. So actually that's the end of, I think some of the, can we focus some of the, I think some of the nominees are here with us today. If we can, maybe we can officially, maybe we can officially, later na lang ma'am, at the end, maybe we can officially recognize them if they're part of the, if they're already part of the panelists, and we can add them later on. Okay. Yes, okay. But so I think that's the end of this morning's activity. You don't have to leave the proceedings. We will not turn this off. This afternoon, we will have 3 more invited speakers. We will also have paper presentations. So it's a full pack event this afternoon. So I hope that you will stay with us and be with us this afternoon. There are a lot more sharings from 3 inspiring women and 4 paper presentations. So I guess that's it for this activity. You can actually stay and watch some of our videos. Maybe we can play our videos. This program is hosted by CIT University, Wildcats Innovations Lab, and maybe we can show some of our videos, please. There's no sound.
Teaching is hard, but teaching programming is harder. Here's Ellie, a programming teacher. Ellie spends most of her time and energy trying to do things manually, from creating activities to checking each of her students' works and even tracking their progress.
So yun guys, so sana may natutunan po kayo doon na live stream natin para makikita din sa inyo yung mga sinalihan natin na conference. So happy congratulations sa organizer ng activity at saka sana sa CSP. No? So always remember, learning is lifetime. Bye!